But before I forget too,
Yeah.
there are some spells that just get completely ruined by grounding totem.
Oh, I
For
know.
instance,
Shadow
like
Bolt.
Ascendance. Yeah, well, yeah, Shadow Ball, but like Ascendance or
Hmm.
Ultimate Penitence. Oh
Yep.
my gosh, you'll see this so many times on stream.
It's December the 5th, 2024, and you know why you're here, so let's kick this off right and introduce the players. Hey, I'm Jarazar, a WoW esports aficionado.
Hey guys, it's Big Moran. I'm a Goldshire Inn aficionado. Almost every night,
Almost every day.
except for Sundays. You know, that's the Sabbath. So we don't go there on the Sabbath. Jake's not here today. He's
Oh,
he's in a
He's-
time machine.
he sends his regrets, though.
Yes, from the future.
Well, actually,
Anyway.
he is from the future because he's like, what, 4 or 5 time zones ahead of us? So,
Oh, he is. He should let us know how tomorrow is.
yeah,
He should give us a warning.
he'll probably tell us tomorrow, though.
Yes.
Let that sink in for a second. Anyways, hey, actually, really funny. The Goldshire Inn little thing you said. So yesterday, because we didn't podcast, so I went to stream for a little bit, and after a bit of like just messing around, I was like, "Hey, stream, what should we do?" And of course, you know, Drew Dynamite was there, and Mordai was there, and Drew's like, "You should go to Goldshire." I'm like,
Yeah, of course he said that.
no, not gonna do it. I was like,
Well, are you on Moonguard?
No, I'm on Cenarian Circle, which is an RP realm, but and so I see Moonguard players every once in a while when I'm out doing like, you know, when I'm fighting for war mode and stuff. And he's like suggested that I just go make a character over on Moonguard, but I'm like, no, because I like being married, and if my and then he suggested that I bring my wife along.
Oh, yeah. A double date, you know, and
Yeah, I don't think that's her idea of a double date. Not happening. Not happening.
oh, what a shame.
I will say, quickly though, since that's what I was doing last night. You were working though, right? You had a crunch that you had to get done.
Yeah, I wanted to get done a video yesterday. Usually I try to hit my like Wednesday, Friday, I try to stick to the deadlines, not fall behind, because that's a recipe for disaster in the content sphere.
Yep.
I've in my spare time I've been playing Assassination Rogue, which has been quite fun.
So are you 2400 yet?
I'm so close. I was so close today. I was like 2350 today. And then I had a very weird experience. I've heard rumors about people win trading in Solo Shuffle. And I don't know if this was a win trading lobby, but the first 3 games were less than 20 seconds each. Like our teams ran in and someone just died. Just out of nowhere, which is just very weird. It's very uncommon that a game ends like that, and for a game to end like that 3 times in a row, I was like, something's weird in this lobby. So unfortunately, I did not do well in that lobby. That tanked me a little bit, but I'm climbing back up, and I'm hoping to get 2400 by the end of this week. That'd be really cool.
No, hopefully. Just out of curiosity, like, where was that? Like around the 23 MMR you said?
Yes, like 2350 ish.
Okay. Because I'm just wondering if there was a person there that was, in their placement games who just like jumped up really high in their MMR and was where they shouldn't have been, and then they just end up flopping.
You know what's interesting about that? So when my first game that I played on my Rogue, I learned that the placement MMR that you get is like around 1850. It's like,
yeah, it's way up.
That's the starting MMR for a fresh character, which I think is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And yeah, like it was really weird. Like I did fairly well in my first few lobbies, and I was like, 500 rating, but I was 2100 MMR or whatever pretty quickly. I mean, not to toot my own horn or anything, but yeah, I just Venruki was talking about this on stream today, or he had a video about this. I don't remember. That like the new player experience for PvP is just kind of getting a bit insane with the way that inflation works, because inflation is not just on the high end of the ladder. It's literally everyone on the ladder gets inflated, and that includes the starting MMR. And that's part of me thinks that there's a problem with that. Like intuitively, that's not a good idea.
So, does that mean that the inflation right now is at 350?
Presumably yes. Yeah.
Because you should have been 1500 starting, but if you're at
that kind of makes sense, because I look at the top of the Resto Druid ladder for solo shuffle, and prior to MMR inflation, the highest rated Resto Druids were like 2200. Now they're around 2550-ish. So that kind of tracks with the high end of the ladder too, where around 350 since the buffs a few weeks ago. But it doesn't seem like Blizzard has really, they did like this initial inflation, and it felt like there was a really big jump there. But in the past few weeks, it feels like it's really trailed off. So I'm sure it's like it follows like some sort of, I don't know, what would you call it, exponential decay curve, where it just like it had a really big spike and then it just kind of has tapered off a bit.
I would think that might also just be lack of participation, where people are literally robbing the ladder of MMR by not playing, or then switching over to their alts, right? It's actually your fault because you're not playing your druid. You're playing a
That's right. I'm contributing to the problem. I will say this though. What I've learned about playing a DPS is one of the problems with playing a healer is your MMR is being sort of pitted against one player's MMR, okay?
Yep.
And so this tends to happen all the time when you play healer. There's a really good chance that the enemy healer you're matched up against is lower MMR than you. That's very common. They're either like the same MMR or lower. It's very rare that you ever play against someone who's higher MMR than you as a healer, which kind of sucks, because those are the situations. If you go 3-3 against a healer that's lower MMR than you, that's when you don't gain any points,
Yeah.
And sometimes you lose MMR. But as a DPS, I found that I'm very rarely above the average MMR in the lobby. So I think that's kind of why it's easier to climb as a DPS, because the way the math works out with all, because you're, instead of distributing 2 players MMR, you're distributing 4.
Yeah.
You kind of get a more even balance there.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just
as a DPS, if you go 3-3, you can still get like 10, 15 MMR.
Yeah, it was really common. Like that's what was quite jarring, is like in these games where I was going 3-3, I was like, wow, I'm actually gaining rating. That's quite nice. But that rarely ever happens as a healer.
Yeah. That's weird. Which, it's weird that you always feeling yourself pitted against a lower MMR or a similar MMR. You would think by that mathematics that eventually you would also somewhat be the lower MMR playing against a higher MMR healer.
Yeah, from memory, that's only so I played way too many lobbies on Druid in the past 2 weeks. I played an embarrassing amount of solo shuffle, and off the top of my head, I can only remember maybe 5 times where the enemy healer had a higher MMR than me, which yeah, it's not fun. Hey, I mean, we said this before, but something probably needs to change with the rating system. It does seem a bit outdated at this point, and in some ways problematic, just with these weird situations you can get yourself into.
Yeah. I'm sure. Who knows? Maybe they're working on it. Maybe that's the seasonal rewards update that they're working in 11.2.
Oh, that'd be nice.
We'll see. In the meantime, though, since we can't fix rating, why don't we at least tell everybody about the upcoming PvP events so that they can see what they can do in their pastime.
Get in there and fight! Stop hiding!
That was probably one of my worst transitions.
It's all right.
Segues, they're hard. Upcoming PvP events. So we got the Armed Forces Dungeon League. They've been doing a bunch of other games in this year, but they have actually scheduled a Mythic Plus tournament, and that's going to actually be happening tomorrow. So yeah, if you're interested in watching some teams of players, obviously see how fast they can run Mythic Plus keys. That's happening tomorrow starting at 10 a.m. Pacific, and it's going to be over on AFDL underscore events on Twitch or on YouTube. So if you want to watch that. For other events, we have so MDI just finished, and at the very end they promoted that they have another great push scheduled, which is actually kind of different. Usually they don't have them in the same season. So this is going to be happening in January is going to be the time trials. And then shortly after that is going to be the actual tournament. I don't know about you. I like the great push. I like it better than MDI, you know?
Yeah. I think it's a more interesting, like MDI just sort of feels a bit gimmicky if I'm being honest. Like it's it's cool, but the Great Push seems to align more with what Mythic Plus is all about, like getting the highest key.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I've heard, because I've had I've talked to some of those MDI and Great Push competitors, and apparently though the Great Push is quite exhausting from the competitor point of view. Like you don't, like, taking a break is losing time. It's the whole point of the event, right, is to just get the highest key, which you can only do if you're kind of playing continuously for the entire time segment. So
but they have forced time. They have to take breaks. That's part of the rule set, is that they force them to take I think they have a maximum, I think what it is, like 30 minutes maximum or something like that. They have to take they can take it right at the beginning, but they have like a certain cutoff time where they have to end it. But anyway, I do like that format. So if you're interested, make yourself a team. You can sign on up to that. And last but not least, this one doesn't have a social link to it, so I can't really link it. But there's a thing called the PvP Allstars Guild Championship Tournament. This is going to be EU. It's run by a German player named Rickx. And I actually saw this over on the Skill Capped Discord.
Oh.
But so what they're doing is it's a 24 player sign up. So you sign up solo. Then he will make randomized 3v3 teams, no tanks, only healers and DPS, 30k gold buy-in, and and then I think he said the teams will be announced on the 17th of January, and then so you have like a day to kind of like strategize with your team, and then the tournament's going to be on the 18th, and the prizes are actually pretty good. Like obviously there's a gold cash out. But I want to say he had like some peripherals, like some headsets and some mice or something like that he's also given away for the tournament. So nice. So it's a good idea. So if you're interested in that, go look for Rickx, hashtag 2749 on Discord, and he will, and that's how you sign up. Or sorry, not on Discord, that's on Bnet. My apologies. Rickx 2749 on Bnet. That's all that I know of PvP events. If anybody knows of any, please let us know and we'll happily shout them out. But in the meantime, we're actually going to do the subject analysis and talk about what we're going to talk about, which is actually a continuation from the last one. But here we go.
I'm going to light you up, sweet cheeks.
Indeed. So last episode, we talked about beginner up to intermediate techniques and how to help people, what they can do to improve their PvP game experience or get into it for the first time. And so we thought it'd be a good idea to just transition beyond that to the more advanced techniques. And I'm going to be honest, Big, this is out of my, you're out of my league here. Like, you're going to start talking about stuff and I'm just going to like, I have that glazed look on my face because you're probably going to start talking like, I feel like you're talking astrophysics and I'm still doing grade 10 math or something. But, why don't you kick it off? Because like you're my expert. You're the guy that, I mean, she just said you're almost 2,400. I'm still at 600.
Well, it's interesting because I think WoW is sort of an enigma in many ways, WoW PvP, where it's both a very simple and a very complicated game at the same time. There's sort of a lot of moving parts when it comes to PvP, right? A lot of stuff happening at the same time. So the simple part is that the basic way you win arenas not too complicated, right? Get someone's HP to 0. Well, how do you do that? Well, you're going to combine your burst with some control. You're going to do this over and over, and eventually someone's going to go down, okay? That, I think, is sort of where you should be if that basic understanding is fundamental to playing arena, right? And so then the reason why WoW Arena is so complicated is I think a lot of details matter. A lot of small little details matter. There's all these little secrets in PvP that aren't very obvious. And I'll start with... Oh, are we...
Yeah, you're good.
Still having...
No.
Okay. I'll start with sort of something that a lot of players tend to ignore for a very long time, which is positioning. Okay, so
sorry, hold on. We talked about position last time.
Yeah, but I want to talk about some small details with positioning.
Okay. All right.
So if you are a player and let's say you're playing a Resto Druid, okay, and you're getting attacked by 2 melee, you might have a tendency to try to drag those 2 melee around a pillar.
Yep.
And, you've seen this in PvP videos, you've seen this on streams, you've seen people run melee behind pillars, and, presumably that's a good thing to do. But that's not always the best thing to do. If you're playing with 2 casters, for instance, and you're dragging 2 melee behind a pillar, chances are that your casters are being line of sighted from those melee too, which means they can't really help you. They can't counter pressure. So that's what I mean when I say this, the small little details matter. Like, things that otherwise wouldn't seem to have a very big impact tend to have a much bigger impact when you are already sort of a mechanically sound player. So I have some notes here. Like, I think, first of all, I guess we should define like what is an advanced player. Like, when should you sort of recognize yourself as kind of sort of progressing towards being advanced? I think there's a few assumptions that we need to have. Okay, number one is your damage relatively optimized. Number 2, do you have some basic idea, basic conception of arena strategy, which includes, picking the right targets, trading cooldowns, sort of doing that setup thing I was discussing earlier where you just burst with control. And then do you have like decent game knowledge, right? You don't have to have like an insane, in-depth encyclopedia worth of knowledge PvP, but if you can just basically recognize, what certain cooldowns do and what certain CC icons look like and all that sort of stuff, I think that's some good assumptions for an intermediate player who's kind of on their way to being a more advanced player. And if I had to stick a rating on that, of course ratings change every season with inflation, which we were just talking about earlier.
Yeah. Sorry, folks. I'm actually messaging Big in the background because I keep hearing this like background hissing or something like that, and so I'm interrupting the podcast but you sound better now. It's weird. It's like you hit something and then it goes quiet.
Yeah.
But then whistle creeps up.
God knows what it is. It's the snake living in my computer. Anyway, I was going to say, if I had to assign a rating benchmark to being advanced, I'd say probably somewhere around 2K. That
Yeah?
period between rival and duelist, I think that sort of journey is where you sort of get your real PvP legs.
Okay. See, I kind of had the assumption it was going to be over 2K.
I think 2K players these days are very, very solid.
Mm-hmm.
At least compared to the past. I mean, there used to be quite a big difference between a 2K rated player and like a 2200 rated player.
Mm-hmm.
But now I think that difference is much smaller.
Okay.
And these, if you're playing at 2100, if you're playing at duelist, I mean, I think that at this point you're in the top 10%.
True.
So in some cases, if you're 2100 on some specs, you're like in the top 3%.
Well, yeah, I guess this season is so weird too. I'm kind of curious though, like, because in what bracket are we talking? Are we talking 2s? Are we talking RBGs? Are we talking 3s? Are we talking solo shuffle? BG Blitz?
I'm going to talk solo shuffle because it's sort of the...
Okay.
Yeah, it's so crazy these days. There's so many brackets, and 2K in 1 is like 2K and 3v3. Yeah. 2K and 3v3 right now is really, really good. Like that, if you can be 2K and 3s, oh my gosh, you're
rank 1.
You're like yeah, you would have been a gladiator in like any other season. But yeah, I think solo shuffle is
2Ks and 2s is like duelist, isn't it?
2K and 2s is pretty good too. I think right now the high end of the ladder is like 2400, 2500.
Yeah.
But 2s, okay. I mean, 2s is a completely different ball game. 2s is its own little bracket. I love 2s, but it's just a bit weird.
I know you do. I know. I have to ask, and yeah, I'm derailing a little bit, but do you really think, I'm going to be controversial here, but do you really think that a pressing W PvE rotation melee player at 2K actually has all that knowledge?
Not always.
They're there.
But yeah, it's interesting, like that you kind of frame this person as a PvE super high damage.
I'm just quoting Reddit here, But yeah, that's how a lot of people frame it, though, right? There's a lot of people that are like, these people are 1600 rated players that are now 2K and solo shuffle, and sure, they have their damage rotation down, but that's about all they got. At least that's how it's being portrayed on socials.
Yeah, I mean, solo shuffle is a very weird PvP experience.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not really that the coordination isn't there. It's not the same. Sorry, I keep cutting you off.
No, I mean, the coordination can be there, but it doesn't need to be there. That's the weird irony of solo shuffle, is like sometimes it's just very sloppy PvP, if I'm being honest. It's fun. I don't have any. I know some people have their criticisms with solo shuffle, which is understandable. Mm-hmm. And I was actually getting very nostalgic the other day for 3v3. I haven't played 3s in a while, but man, because I was okay. Like I played these 1,000 rounds of solo shuffle on my Resto Druid, and it was just, honestly, if I'm being perfectly honest, it was kind of making me a bit depressed. Mm-hmm. And I was like, why does this feel so bad? I was like, what's happening here that I feel so bad playing a game that I enjoy? And I realized, like, in solo shuffle, when you lose, you're losing alone. There's sort of this isolating feeling. Whereas in 3v3, if you're losing, at least you're sort of like losing with your friends, and you kind of can talk about it. You can sort of try to fix things. But in solo shuffle, it's like there's no fixing things. And sometimes your losses are just completely out of your control.
Yeah. You're not wrong.
But I mean, getting back on point.
Yeah.
There is something to say, like the 2K rated player who just does a lot of damage. I mean, that's kind of why I think last time when we were discussing becoming an intermediate player, I think damage is just, it really carries.
It does. Especially in solo.
Especially in solo shuffle, yeah. I mean, I played a few games of Boomkin a few weeks ago, and I really like to optimize my burst. Like, I'm one of those players who likes to just literally hit as hard as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And there were some games where I would just like, I would press my incarn and I'd do all the min-maxy stuff with it, and I would just win just with one incarn, just boom, just blasting someone with unhealable damage. And you know, if you can learn to do that, if you can learn how to do the unhealable damage, you know, the min-maxy stuff, I mean, you're kind of ready for that intermediate level. And then I think the advanced, you know, becoming more advanced, especially in solo shuffle, requires you to sort of understand game states a little better. Because against better players, you can't just rely on doing big damage in order to win. You kind of have to be a bit more crafty. You kind of have to recognize game states, which I think is a really important concept, which we can talk about.
Well, I think we should. I think so. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're leaning into the idea that is this knowing the CDs and the CDRs, and like knowing if you know, is the healer CCable, and if it is a full CC, do you have a trinket and all that stuff? Is that what you're talking about for game states? Yeah,
it's kind of like, it's recognizing that the game is sort of like a pendulum that swings back and forth. You know, sometimes you're recovering and you're behind and you're trying to stabilize, and sometimes it's your turn to apply pressure. And recognizing those moments, and when you can do one and when you need to be doing one versus when you need to be doing the other, is, I think, part of becoming a more advanced player. You know, what tends to happen in my experience as a healer is some DPS, you know, they're really good at doing damage. They, you know, they can do their setups, but they don't know when it's time to pull away. Like, they don't realize that they don't have to be doing damage all game. They can kite and try to avoid damage for a while. I mean, there's nothing wrong with sitting behind a pillar for a few seconds. It's really funny. Yeah.
Sorry, I feel cowardly when I do that.
Oh, you shouldn't. I mean, it's really funny. I mean, you play Warlock. It irks me to no end when a Warlock will be under pressure, they'll port away, and they'll immediately come back in line of sight and just get charged by a warrior. Like, that always, it's like, come on, man. Like,
I only did that 5 times.
You ported to avoid damage, and now you're immediately taking damage again. I think a good play, you know, if you want to get better at Warlock, or you want to see what it's like to sort of understand game states, I mean, Chanimal's a really great player to watch. You know, and when I was, it's funny, like, Vinruki was playing Warrior on stream a few weeks ago, and he was like, he realized he was under pressure, and he was like, well, time to play safe. You know, I've seen this movie play out before. If I push in, I'm gonna die. So you kind of have to recognize when you're not going to be safe, and, you know, understand that you don't always have to be doing damage. And I think one key thing to understand with solo shuffle specifically is not only is doing damage really important, but so is avoiding damage.
Oh, yeah.
And that should be sort of weighted equally in some regards. So as long as you're doing one of those things, or ideally both at the same time, you're doing a good job in solo shuffle.
Yeah. Now, I'm seriously not being facetious or anything. I do feel cowardly by running behind a pillar and trying to avoid damage. I'm guessing that is equally or even more important into higher dampening, like, because solo shuffle, like, dampening ramps really fast, right?
Yeah.
So, like, after 2 minutes of gameplay, like, where you might have been able to just still take face tank some damage, like, there's no way after 2 minutes.
Yeah, when you get to that point in dampening, it becomes really, really important to start avoiding damage as much as you can. I mean, what I think a lot of players don't understand as well is that at that stage of dampening, there is no correct target. The correct target is whoever you can just safely hit most of the time. Because as long as you're doing damage, the healer won't be able to deal with that damage. So as long as you can sort of do as much damage as you can while avoiding as much damage as you can, you're sort of on the right track. And I noticed this while playing my rogue, which I don't really notice much as a healer. But the games where, like, there's this way I win a lot, where I'll kind of, like, pillar. Like, I'll recognize, like, okay, my vanish is coming up in 15 seconds. If we can just live until my vanish, because vanish is kind of how you burst as an assassination rogue, interestingly enough. Like, so if I'm like, okay, if I can live to my vanish, we're gonna win this game. So it's really important when you to recognize that, like, okay, my main cooldown is coming up soon. I just need to make sure that I don't die. And if I can make sure that that doesn't happen, I can win the game with my main cooldown. And so yeah, I'll just like pillar for a little bit, and then vanish comes up, I'll vanish, boom, triple garrote everyone, you know, cheap shot, press kidney, and boom, someone's just, you know, at that point the damage is so unhealable. Yeah, someone's dead.
So where are we going with this? Sorry, I keep interrupting you, but like this still sounds kind of like intermediate. What's the finer points then that gets you from doing that at 1600 to doing that at 2K? I'm guessing the difference is at 1600 your opponent isn't able to counterplay you and stop your damage, versus at 2K that there's all those other little things that everybody else can do, and they're that more aware.
Yeah, I think, geez, one of the most frustrating things about playing WoW these days is players are really good at making sure you don't have fun. For instance, if I'm playing at 1600 on Assassination Rogue, I open up from stealth, I can triple garrote everyone, I can, you know, double cheap shot, I can kidney, I can do all of my opener things like without issue. But what tends to happen at higher ratings is that people are really good at utilizing all that micro CC. You know, I open up and I'm immediately disarmed or something. You know, I get immediately coiled. I get immediately like something happens to stop my momentum. And I think that's it's funny. Like, I think part of playing WoW these days is honestly having a cool head, because it is really frustrating to get CC'd like that over and over and over. I'm sure you saw that clip I posted of Enruki the other day. Beginning of that clip is pretty crazy. Like, he's running in towards the enemy team. He gets Earth Grab rooted. He pops his Tiger's Lust to break the root. Then he gets put into a static field totem and gets ported away. Then the shaman drops a cap stun and he gets stunned. I think twice. And then he finally connects to the warlock and he gets coiled. It's like, okay.
And that was a very pivotal. Like, I love all the micro CC and everything. That was such a great clip.
That happens all the time. That's the experience of playing a DPS these days in arenas. Like, that just happens to you, and you have to be cool about it.
Well, you definitely can't react to that and lose your. Because then if you get emotionally upset like that, then you're losing that that ability to just press the buttons and not like just be hammering your keyboard, I guess. Now, so for me, like, I might have like a focus macro or something like that, but do you think the reason why, like, at 1600 versus, let's say, like, 1600 you open up and everything happens, you're able to get all your stuff off, versus at like 2K, you know, you go to open up and immediately you're disarmed, or immediately your legs sweat, or immediately you're coiled immediately. Like, that almost sounds like somebody has a macro, like an arena 1-2-3 macro or something like that, where they're not having to click and target you, they're not having to try to find you on the map or something like that. It's just push a button and done. So is that like more like a programming knowledge than a game knowledge thing? Because we didn't really talk about that in intermediate.
Yeah, I think I'll say that macros sort of are like tools, right? They fix problems and they make things easier. And so I don't think in order to be a high level player you have to have all these crazy macros, but it definitely helps. It doesn't hurt, right? I'll give a really practical example of what you just described. I know during Wrath of the Lich King Classic, the heyday of RMP mirrors, okay? What a lot of the rogues had macros for the RMP mirror specifically, which were their Arena 1, 2, 3 macros, and they had Shadow Step and Cheap Shot in them. And that was the thing, that was the counterplay, where if the enemy rogue opens up and you haven't opened up as the rogue, you immediately Shadow Step Cheap Shot them. That's how you played that matchup. And so these macros made it much easier where you could just do it instantly, because I think what these rogues were doing in a lot of the times, I mean, Wrath is a really weird game and people do all these crazy things. But I think a lot of the rogues would like vanish instantly once they would open or something.
Yeah.
And so if you had that macro, you could get them before they vanished. But yeah, so things like that certainly do help. Not every player uses Arena 1, 2, 3 macros. I mean, in some cases it's really not needed. You know, if you play Warrior or something like a melee, it's not always that useful to have. But it definitely does make your life easier if you're comfortable with all those keybinds.
Yeah. I almost feel like a warrior would have like a friendly version of 1, 2, 3 just for intervene.
Yeah. Something like that might be useful, or like a Stormbolt 1, 2, 3, but that's pretty much it.
Well, no offense to warriors, but it's not like you have that much CC, right? It's like Stormbolt and Shout. Yeah,
and Shockwave, but Shockwave is like an AoE, you know, you don't have to.
Yeah,
it doesn't go on a player; it shoots out in front of you.
Exactly. Not much targeting there, I guess.
No.
All right. So, coming back from all that, what else do we need to do to be, I don't know, advanced?
So part of playing around game states, I think, requires you to start using all those add-ons sort of in a more technical way. So people tend to have like this spaceship UI these days, and it's like, well, what are they actually looking at? And one important place to look at if you're a DPS is Omnibar. If you have Omnibar set up where you're tracking the enemy team's defensives, well, now you get some information on who might be a good kill target, right? If one player has used all of their defensives and the other player hasn't used any, it's like, well, it's quite obvious who's going to be a better kill target during your next setup. So that's definitely going to help. And, you know, you can even use Omnibar as a healer to track enemy offensive cooldowns to sort of know when a big go is coming, right? It's really important as a healer, for instance, to track Kidney Shot or Psychic Scream or Intimidation, Freezing Trap, these abilities that sort of signal that the enemy team is about to do their setup. And that way you can maybe trade something preemptively, or, you know, get ready to counterplay if you have some counterplay available. So that's a really practical way to start using those add-ons, both the healer and as DPS. I think another more advanced add-on is Omni CD. I don't know if we discussed it last time.
Don't think so.
Yeah, Omni CD I know has been really popular in Mythic Plus for a while, and it's only kind of recently been adopted for PvP, but allows you to see your team's defensive cooldowns, and you can even track offensive cooldowns too.
Okay.
And that's really important in solo shuffle, especially as a healer, to know what defensives your teammates have, because you kind of need to know how vulnerable they might be.
Yeah, I think I was using an Arena Team Tracker for that, ATT.
Yeah, I think there's probably been different versions of it. I mean, with all these add-ons, there's sort of like a million different versions these days.
Yeah.
Omni CD is pretty nice because it's set up out of the box. I mean, you can customize it. You can track more or less if you want, but it's a very practical add-on, I think, to have. But only if you're using it, right? I mean, the rule of thumb with any add-on is, we discussed this last time, is if you're not getting value from that add-on, just stop playing with it.
Yeah.
So if you've never looked at your team's defensives with Omni CD up, then it's like, okay, well, maybe you don't need it yet.
Yeah. I think yet is a good caveat on that. But if we're talking advanced, like, they should probably be using it, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, for sure. I mean, we included it in the skill cap UI. I mean, it is something that eventually you should be using, and should be using it properly. but not every player needs to know that information all the time.
Okay. So
same thing with Omnibar.
So for Omnibar and Omni, so what you're talking though is like for Omni CC, so Omni CC on your team side, knowing that if you have a CD, if you're ready, if you think you can go, let's say your 2-minute CD is up, but then you look over and you notice that your teammate, theirs is like still 15 seconds. So you have to wait 15 seconds before you push your button. Otherwise you won't be synced, right? Is that kind of like what you're talking about?
Yeah, it's like, okay, your Warlock gets put into a kidney shot and they don't have their trinket, they don't have their dark pack, they don't have their unending resolve, and the enemy team's popping cooldowns. It's like, well, okay, now it's your turn as the healer to press your button. Mm-hmm. It's funny because Omni CD is also a cooldown or also an add-on that makes solo shuffle really frustrating at times, because as a healer, if your partner dies and you notice they have like every single cooldown available, you're like, oh, come on, man. Yeah. Please.
That's where you need to screenshot that right before they start flaming you. Heal me.
Yeah. Just as a little aside, I made a video last week that should be coming out, I think next week, probably early next week, maybe even at the end of this week, about the video title is 10 Rules to Escape Low Ratings. Classic clickbait title.
Yeah.
And one of the rules that I mentioned is to avoid dying without pressing every single cooldown you have. Mm-hmm. I think that's a really good, if I had to give someone like an actionable tip that they could just use in every single arena. Sometimes if you're an intermediate player, and this is going to be relevant to the conversation, if you're an intermediate player, you understand cooldown trading. You're like, okay, I need to press my cooldown when the enemy team presses theirs. I need to be trading 1-to-1. It's like, well, yes, on paper, but arena is really chaotic, and sometimes you have to just wing it, right? Sometimes you have to play a little bit off script. It's what I like to call like sloppy PvP or bad PvP. Sometimes you need to learn how to play bad PvP, which means like, okay, the game is not going well. So we really need to, or something has gone terribly wrong. We need to readjust. And so if that means using a defensive cooldown when it's not exactly optimal, well, so be it. Like, deal with it, right? And I think that's really important for players to, especially healers. Don't let your partner die without literally pressing everything you possibly have. You should try to keep them alive at all costs. And same thing for a DPS. Try to keep yourself alive at all costs, even if it's not optimal. Press that ice block, press that whatever, teleport, do whatever you can to not die. And that's, I think that will go a long ways.
Yeah. I think that, well, if you're already on the back foot, using a CD to save yourself and maybe put yourself on a good foot isn't a bad thing, because the alternative there is not using it and dying, right?
Right.
Is essentially what you're saying. And then for using Omnibar, what you're talking about is like, if let's say you're pushed in or whatever, and you see that your enemy's team's CDs are coming off, that should probably be your hint to retreat back to safety before they can open up on you and maybe trick you behind a pillar or something like that, right?
Or it can mean the opposite. So if the enemy team doesn't have so say they don't have their big damage cooldowns for the next 20 seconds, it's like, well, now you know that for the next 20 seconds, you're going to be a bit more safe. Like, you can afford to be a bit more aggressive. Mm-hmm. And of course, leading up to the cooldowns being available, then you might need to start thinking about defensive play.
Like watch for them to start pushing in and stuff too.
Yeah, that's another thing that I sort of learned, I think, a little bit too late along my PvP journey. I remember this was during Warlords of Draenor, and I was playing, there was a mage named F.T.B.Z.M. He was a really good mage. Yeah. And I think we were playing Rogue Mage or something in threes. And I don't remember what the matchup was, but the enemy team had just done their setup, okay? They had just done their damage. And I was like, come on guys, like let's hide behind the pillar. Like we need to recover. And Pieces was like, no, like now we, you know, the enemy team just did their damage. Now it's our turn. And so that's really, I think, an important thing for you to learn as a player. And this again goes back to game states. When it's your turn, you need to really take that time and push that advantage, right? You can't pillar forever. You need to, like, especially in this day and age, you can't just AFK behind a pillar and play for dampening, especially in solo shuffle. It doesn't really work like that. And so if the enemy team just did their damage and you're stable, now's your turn. Like, now you need to be the scary people.
Yeah.
And push in. And yeah, I think it's important for not only DPS to recognize that, but especially healers, you know? I think a big part of playing healer is recognizing when you are vulnerable to CC and when you're not vulnerable to CC.
Yep.
And okay, if you get triple polyed by a mage, now you know that you're going to be fully DR'd for the next 18 seconds and you can kind of do whatever you want. Or if you play a caster and you notice none of the enemy team has their interrupt, it's like, well, okay, now it's my turn to start casting, right? And you really need to push those advantages as far as you can.
You're not wrong. I feel like there's so much more you can do with that information too, to like really elevate your gameplay. But I'm guessing really a lot of that is just, you know, reviewing your videos, right? Like watching your gameplay afterwards and seeing, you know, what you did, and at the whole time, like, don't look at your other teammates, just look at what you did and think, what could I have done better?
Yeah, and I think all those little Twitch clippy type plays that the rank 1 players are making, and, you know, they're like, oh, clip it. A lot of those things are just like these tiny little timing decisions that are made based around add-ons, you know, like the priest is able to death the blind because they recognize that blind is just coming off CD, the rogue is running towards them, and so they, you know, they have all that knowledge, and that's what allows them to do the cool things. Or, you know, the night elf is able to shadow meld the hunter's intimidation stun because they recognize it was coming off CD. I mean, that again, that's like, I'll circle back to what I opened up with. Like, a lot of times, like, Arena is about these really small details. Another good example, you know, on that same note, which I also included in this video of 10 rules to escape low rating, is I think it's really important for people to understand that there's these sort of like side quests that you get in Arena. For instance, if you're playing against a shaman, there's going to be these totems, okay? Not all the totems are important, but some of them are very, very important. If you can start killing those totems, you know, of course, it's not going to seem like you're doing much, but you're actually having a big impact on the game by simply killing a healing tide totem, or killing a Psi Fiend if it's a Shadow Priest, or, you know, killing an Observer. There's all these little tiny side quests you need to be doing in Arena. And the more you can do those little things, again, they're small little details of the game. I mean, you can win Arena games without killing any Psi Fiends, but why wouldn't you kill the Psi Fiend, right? And I remember I was watching Vinruki, who was watching Waz play, and Waz was killing the grounding totems for Chanimal. A grounding totem would spawn, and Waz would be like, I'm killing grounding, you know? And it's like, okay, well, that's why he's the best melee in the game. Like, he understands that there's all these little tiny side quests, and that can help my team, and it's gonna take me 0 time to kill them. You know, I'm a rogue. I can, you know, with high mobility, I can get over there quickly, kill that grounding, and it's no big deal. And I mean, that's why he's such a great player, is because he recognizes there's all these little tiny things you can do.
As a rogue, or even as like if you're playing a feral, doing those little side quests give you combo points, which then let you do more damage, right?
Yeah, like that's the thing, is sometimes it's beneficial to, like, there's, okay, for instance, healing tide totem, all right? I believe, I mean, don't quote me on this, but I believe healing tide totem, if it lasts for its full duration, it will heal like for over 5 million. It's like 5 to 10 million, somewhere in that range.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of healing. And if you can kill healing tide totem really quickly, it's like the most valuable thing. Damage to like the damage ratio that there is like insane. You know, you've basically did 8 million damage by deciding to kill this totem for 3 seconds. Okay, like that's value right there.
Yeah.
And so yeah, these side quests, these small details, that's what really matters at this point.
So, okay, so for totems, obviously the advanced part there is nuke them down as fast as you can, the ones you can fast. So that's grounding, or if let's say you're a caster, use an inconsequential spell on the grounding, right? Is that fair?
Yeah. I mean, grounding dies in one hit, but you need to hit it with something. You have to physically target it these days.
Yeah. So if you have like a I don't know, some spell that's like really super fast cast, doesn't really do much damage, doesn't really do anything, but it'll get rid of that super fast done.
Moonfire or something.
Exactly. If you're a melee, then run over there and give it a quick smack. Thank you. Or I guess probably like even like something like a toss glaive or a shattering throw, maybe. I don't know, something like that.
But before I forget too, there are some spells that just get completely ruined by grounding totem. For instance,
Shadow
like
Bolt.
Ascendance. Shadow Bolt. But like Ascendance or Ultimate Penitence. Oh my gosh, you'll see this so many times on stream. Where a priest will press Ultimate Penitence, the shaman will grounding, and all the bolts will go into that. Like, all 50 of those bolts will go into the single grounding totem. It'll do nothing. It's like, well, there's my 4-minute cooldown just got countered by this stupid little totem. Another big one is...
It would do the same thing for Magic Missile then too, right?
Like Arcane Missiles?
Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry. D&D brain.
Yeah, they would probably all go into grounding. Yeah, I know. Like when Eli shamans pop when they get the AOE lava burst thing, when they press Primordial Wave, I think all those meatballs can fly into the grounding totem. So there's several abilities that just get completely ruined by grounding.
Yeah, it's a very OP spell, really. Pretty.
It's a very efficient.
Impactful.
Button. Yeah.
So obviously, those ones. Obviously, I think there's some totems that we can't kill, right? Or they're useless.
There's some totems that just have too much HP that it's not really worth killing them, like Earthen Wall Totem for Resto Shamans. I believe also the new Surging Totem for Totemic Shamans. I don't think you can kill it easily.
Probably not.
I've never really looked at it, but I know it's a really important totem.
Okay. But I was also gonna say, we really didn't talk about mirror images for mages, the Earth, Wind, and Fire for the monks. Would you say it's worthwhile to try to see, like, if you can do like a big AOE CC of demonology warlock pets, like all their imps and everything? Is that worthwhile?
For Demo Warlocks, you're looking to root the dogs, the Dreadstalkers, and then I believe they're called Charhounds.
Yeah, okay.
And if you can do both those, then that's really good, because those hit with melee. I don't think really did the imps. Novaing the imps doesn't really do much.
Okay.
Unholy DKs have like an entire Lich King army these days. That they have the 4 horsemen. So those are really good to CC. I mean, BM Hunter pets, especially during Beastal Wrath, always really good. I mean, the other nice thing about CCing a BM Hunter pet is there's certain abilities that the hunter cannot really use if their pet is rooted. I believe they can't use their intimidation if the pet is rooted. They can't use kill command. They can't, if they're survival, they can't use flanking strike. So you actually kind of ruin their damage a little bit, and that's another side quest, is to CC pets.
Yeah.
The more you can just get in a habit of doing these small things, it really goes a long way. I know it hasn't really been a relevant cooldown for a while, but back in the day, when Tyrant would spawn, when a Warlock would summon Tyrant, you'd hear it in the communications of like these high-rated players. They'd be like, "I'm kicking it, I'm gouging it." They would. It's like that became like the number one thing to stop was the AI. So these things do matter.
Yeah.
And so I made this video, okay, before I leveled my rogue, and I wanted to use my gameplay as like a proof of concept. I've like, okay, I just told a bunch of people that they should be killing Siphene. I'm gonna start killing Siphene. So I've been doing that. Like I've been doing all these little side quests in Arena, and I feel like it works. You know,
Yeah.
it's helpful. It's a useful thing to do.
Do you end with a golden question mark because you did the quest? It's not.
You know, yeah. I think I did machinima for this video, and if there's ever a PvP, so I use Narcissus. It's a add-on. It's a really cool add-on, by the way. It's fun to take it allows you to basically take screenshots of like fancy. It's a model viewer within the game, and so you can place models in the world and record little scenes. And so I always like to use you know how Swifty has his own NPC in Ashran.
Yep.
I always use Swifty's NPC for any sort of thing. So I have a scene of Swifty giving me a quest in the starting room.
That's actually really awesome. That's a worthy side quest.
Yes.
Yeah. I feel like it would be like his side quest is you have to you can kill somebody, but it has to be with a one-shot macro.
That's right.
What?
Little side tangent. I've been playing this spec on Rogue, this hero spec that not many people play. All the Ass Rogues, they play Deathstalker, I think it's called, which is like the more optimal one. But I like to play this. It's called Fate Bound or something. Fate something.
Right.
It's the keystone ability of this Fate Bound Rogue is every time you press a finisher, you flip a coin, and if the coin lands on heads, you get more you get a damage buff. If the coin lands on tails, you hit them with the coin or something, and it does damage to them. But it's really funny because you can flip multiple coins. Ooh. And so you can flip, I think, up to 3 coins at once, depending on how you sequence your abilities. And so it's really funny. A lot of my wins come from me vanishing, and then I'll open up and I'll press a finisher and I'll flip 3 coins. And if they all land on tails, each coin hits for like 500k. So I will sometimes just accidentally hit someone for like 1.5 million up to 2 million with these little coins that I have no control over. And it's completely random. Yep. And it's just so funny because I get a lot of people in the lobbies, and after I kill them, they're like, "What happened?" I'm like, "Oh, you got coined, man. Like, I flipped some coins. Got unlucky."
I'm sure there's a bunch of people that hate that because, again, if they can't avoid it, if they can't challenge it, if they can't, they don't like that. There's no avoiding that, right?
Yeah, you can't avoid the coins.
No, you can't. Well, you can. Just don't play slots. So I feel like there's just so much more to advance though, or like, am I overthinking this? Because like when I try to think about advanced players, like there's so many things that I feel they know and they can do, and that's why they can just like shut me down or they just obliterate me, and I don't even understand what happened. And I get like maybe that's just all game knowledge and whatnot. It's just layers and layers of game knowledge, and they just know things that I don't know yet. But
yeah, no,
what we talked about though doesn't seem like it's that much farther ahead. Like, is there a point where like maybe it's just my capacity or my incapacity of being able to take all that information, aggregate it, and make a snap decision, the correct snap decision, just basically like looking at my screen and taking that all in? Because I feel like maybe it's just my brain, but I feel like when I take it all in, I'm trying to look at all that stuff, I'm dying because my brain can't do all that stuff together.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly something to say about the speed of Arena at higher ratings. I mean, it's definitely significantly faster, where you really need to be making decisions quickly. A really good player to sort of exemplify this is Peekaboo. Like I'm sure you've watched Peekaboo do his, viewer 2v2 games. It's like, well, he's absolutely obliterating people. So while it's true that Peekaboo might be doing like more damage than the average player, what he's really doing exceptionally well is he's playing the game really fast. Okay.
Yeah.
Someone pops a defensive, he instantly swaps. Someone pops their offensive, he instantly disarms it. Someone, CCs his healer, well, he instantly trades his cooldown, right? These decisions are being made very, very quickly. And if every decision is if you're making every decision 20% faster than your opponent, well, that's going to quickly add up over time, right?
Yeah.
I've seen people say like, oh, APM doesn't matter in WoW because of the global cooldown, and that's just so far from the truth, if you ask me. And in some ways, I'd say APM matters a lot in WoW. Yeah. And, what you want to avoid doing is, what we've called dead globals, where you're not pressing anything. And, if you can press something every global, I mean, you're kind of already doing well. If you can press something every global while making intelligent decisions with those presses, well, then you're playing exceptionally well.
Yeah.
And yeah, the pace, I think that's because I mean, it's definitely happened to me where I've gotten like stomped by Peekaboo or someone in arena, and I've just been like, whoa, okay, I need to sit up in my seat. Like I need to really dial in here.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with arena is like the better you get, the more exhausting it is to play arena. It's just like, oh my god, I'm mentally taxed because you have to play dialed in every time.
How many times do you push a button before it actually goes off?
Oh, like do I spam on my keyboard?
Yeah. I find myself like I'm like hit like, at least 3 times. Like I'm like hitting that button 3 times before the global cooldown finally resets and I actually cast the spell and then I move on to the next one.
Yeah, I'm not that big. Like I maybe I don't notice because I have a mechanical keyboard with silent keys. Like I don't like the clicky. But sometimes I'll listen to people's streams and I'll be like, oh my gosh, this person is spamming their keys. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think spamming is always better. I mean,
I thought it was better because I thought the video game actually had some sort of an intuitive part to it, and I feel like it's reading those those early presses to know what you're going to do next, so that it can queue it properly.
That's the spell queue window.
Yeah,
is what you're describing. Yeah, not many people know that this setting exists, but there is a spell queue window in WoW, and what that means is, say your spell queue is set to 200. That stands for 200 milliseconds. That means if you press a key on your keyboard, it will continuously press that key for the next 200 milliseconds. The game will assume that because you press this button, that it's going to go off in the next 200 ms. Mm-hmm. So this is really useful if you are someone who plays on high ping. Like if you're playing on 200 latency or something. Well, you can kind of send the commands to the game before they happen, which helps you avoid lag. There's some crazy technology. So there's I know there's a technology that exists in fighting games, which is quite similar, where because people play fighting games online these days, and in fighting games, latency is a big deal because things can become disjointed really quickly. So what happens in fighting games is they do something kind of similar, but instead of like being restricted by MS, what it does is every time you press a button, there's an animation associated with a move. So you throw out a punch, and so it's called rollback netcode. I'm kind of getting way too out of left field here, but these fighting games are basically skipping frames of animation to help deal with lag. And it's kind of something similar that's happening in WoW. Like the game is sort of predicting what you want to be pressing, and that can help you avoid latency and even do more damage. Like if you have your spell queue window set properly, you'll do more damage because there's no delay in between your abilities.
And to be clear, there's also the other side to it where you can actually end the cast early and start queuing to the next queue, and the game will still send it because it sees it because the latency, that spell queue window and the latency difference, like, yeah, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, if you've ever played with Quartz, the cast bar add-on, there's a little segment at the end of the cast bar, and that shows when you can end the cast.
Yeah,
and it'll still go off.
So I'm not crazy for doing that. Like, that's not, I guess, a bad thing the way I do it. And then we talked about this briefly when we were talking to Dirty, and you also talked about it, especially with casters, is knowing travel time distance. And I feel like that is also an extremely important advanced technique that maybe we should talk about.
Yeah, there's, each spell sort of has a different mechanism through which it like arrives at the enemy player. Some spells travel through the air slowly, some spells instantly hit the enemy player, and that's something you can kind of exploit. Like, for instance, if I play Balance Druid and I have Wrath, I have Starfire, and I have Star Surge. So Wrath and Star Surge have travel times, but Wrath has a cast time and Star Surge is instant. Starfire has a cast time, but it instantly arrives at the enemy player. And I can make Starfire instant proc. Okay, so if I have an instant Starfire, I can basically fit all of my damage into the same window by casting a Wrath, following that up with an instant Star Surge. So now both those abilities leave my hands at the same time, and so they travel towards the enemy player at the same time. Now I'm on the GCD, but my spells are still in the middle of the air, and by the time my GCD finishes, the spells have arrived. Now I can use my instant Starfire, and now suddenly all those abilities have hit the target at the same time.
Yeah.
There's been sort of iconic combos with this in the past, right? Back in the day, you could, I don't remember exactly which, I think it was you could Lava Burst into Chain Lightning, and both of those would hit at the same time as an Ellie Shaman. There's a lot of ways you can sort of exploit the spell travel times. And I think another big one is Evokers. Devastation Evokers can do something quite similar with Eternity Surge and Disintegrates and whatnot. And yeah, I mean, these are all part of these small little details. I mean, Arena's all about getting someone's HP to 0 as quickly as you possibly can. And so there's some ways you can do that by just sequencing your spells in a slightly different way.
What was I going to say? There is... Oh, yeah. For defensives, though, like, to counter that, there's some spells where... And maybe I'm wrong on this, but I thought there was some where, like, if you put your defensive after the cast finished, it will still go through your defensive because it's in the air, and so the system's already calculated that, right?
Yeah. I don't really know the technical details too much. All I just know is, like, a lot of spells, their damage is calculated the moment the spell leaves your hand.
Yeah.
So if the Chaos Bolt leaves your hand, the game thinks that Chaos Bolt is going to be doing, X amount of damage.
1 million damage, sure.
1 million damage. So say the hunter presses Aspect of the Turtle before the Chaos Bolt goes off. Well, now the game is going to take that into consideration and realize that Chaos Bolt is going to be doing 0 damage. But if the hunter presses Aspect of the Turtle once the spell has already left your hands, then they're late. The game has already calculated that the ability is going to hit very hard, and it will go through your turtle and you'll die. So yeah, that's another thing too. Yeah, the way damage is calculated is sometimes you'll be like, oh, what? I pressed my defensive. Why did I die? It's well, the game thought you were dead like a second ago, so that's why you died.
Now, so a while ago, I was thinking about getting a flashcard game put together and like setting it up with all the cooldowns, because there's so many, and I have Omni Bar, and you know, I have the skill capped weak aura pack, and it blows a horn at me, so I know that there's something going on. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I can't remember. The ability just isn't coming to my brain right away, like what's going on. But I feel like yeah, I need to know what that stuff is, but I feel like there's more to the game than just like taking a flashcard, having a flashcard memory game of, you know, that icon means incarn, and when I hear that horn, I need to push the defensive.
Yeah, I mean, not all cooldowns are created equally, right? Like some are scarier than others. And I mean, it just sort of takes, I mean, that's one of those things that just sort of takes time and experience and, you know, to learn. Is, for instance, if a Boomkin or a Feral Druid presses Incarn, that's a very scary cooldown. Especially Boomkin Incarn, that is very scary.
Yeah.
But if the Boomkin presses, I don't know, Fury of a Loon or something, that's not very scary. And so it's like, oh, you need to learn how to parse that and sort of learning how much damage you're going to be taking. I think that's really important. A very important skill that's impossible to teach is sort of knowing how much damage you're going to take. And it's something you can actually learn quite quickly, I think, from playing a healer. When you play a healer, you can kind of feel how much damage your partners are taking. It sounds a bit silly, but it's true. I mean, if with enough repetitions, you kind of can start to recognize patterns. Like, you know, seeing the velocity of that health bar move, how quickly someone is going to die.
Yeah.
And so you can sort of plan your globals around that. That's something that I personally have to do as a Resto Druid all the time with my Nature Swiftness. You know, in order to get a big NS, I need to make sure that a Rejuve is on the target so I can Swift Mend it, and then that will give me Soul of Forest, and then I can press my Nature Swiftness. So that's potentially 3 globals I have to press. And so sometimes I have to sort of calculate, okay, do I have enough time to fit in 3 globals before my partner dies? You know, that's just something that, again, you can't really be taught. You just have to learn it sort of intuitively by getting a lot of reps in arena.
Okay. Well, and having the wherewithal to be able to see what's happening as well, right? Like,
yeah.
I feel like there's more to it than just memorizing cooldowns, right?
Yeah, there's certain little things you need to understand. For instance, Surging Totem, which is the totem that enhancement shamans have on a 30-second cooldown. It's not a big cooldown, but it puts a little radius on the ground, and if the shaman gets all these damage bonuses as long as they're standing in it. So, you know, you have to sort of have the game knowledge that, okay, if the shaman pops their totem, I should move out of it. I mean, it's not really a cooldown that you're trading into. It's sort of just recognizing that there's this other thing that you have to be paying attention to and trying to play around that. I don't know if there's any other good example. Like if you play against the Death Knight, if you stand in their Death, if they're in their Death and Decay, they're going to be automatically cleaving.
Yeah.
You know, Death and Decay is not really a cooldown that you're worried about, but you're worried about the potential damage multiplier it gives. Again, all those things, I mean, there's so much game knowledge. I mean, I sometimes take it for granted. I mean, I've been playing WoW for 18 years. So, you know, at this point, I kind of know all this stuff. But I mean, if you're a new player, geez, I can't even imagine trying to memorize all that stuff.
Well, I think, I remember, again, like I've been playing 20 years, and I just start to feel like I knew the game, and then it'd be a new expansion, and they change, all new abilities, or almost all new abilities, all new talents, all new everything. Okay, just look at that next expansion, all new. So I am kind of happy that, especially like, in Dragonflight and in now The War Within, the game hasn't really changed too much. Yes, there's some new abilities. Yes, there's a few tweaks, but it doesn't feel like I'm learning 36 new specs all over again and trying to memorize all that.
Yeah.
So in that way, I think it's helpful, but you're not wrong. Is that, yeah, if a player came into the game right now and then went to go PvP, they are probably just going to be completely decimated, not just by like getting squished, but just decimated by the amount of game knowledge that they don't have.
Right.
Like, that'd be.
But again, we're talking about becoming an advanced player. All these things I don't think matter that much. I mean, these tiny little details is what I think again truly defines a more advanced player. If you're a beginner and intermediate, if you're wanting to get your 1800 elite set, you don't really need to know all this information. I mean, it's not going to hurt, but it's not going to like instantly make you like, oh, I I need this. Again,
True.
I think going back to our previous episode, the core things that matter in WoW are just sort of like, can you do big damage? Can you do good damage? Do you understand a basic strategy? Can you pick a right target in the starting room? And can you, like, okay, you don't need to know what all these cooldowns do, but if you kind of can have a basic, like, intuition, like, okay, this thing is blasting air horns at me, I should probably be a little bit worried, and if you can do those things, I mean, you're already on the right track. You can worry about these small little details later.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I think, just as a little caveat to that, though, I think having this knowledge is the difference of taking, let's say, like a D tier spec and still doing really well with it, rather than saying, oh, I can't get past 1600 because I'm on a D tier. I need to play an S tier.
Yeah.
Right? So, all right. Is there anything else? I think we pretty much covered it then.
I think that's it.
I don't know. I'm actually kind of impressed with myself. I feel like I followed along a lot better than I thought I was going to.
Yeah, well, you were doubting yourself, but I mean, you've watched enough AWC. I mean, you've played enough WoW. You know. It's the thing is, though. I mean, I think as sad as I'll sound like a broken record saying this, but I really, in this day and age, if you can just do big damage, it goes a long ways. Like, and I know that's like easier said than done, right? Like, of course, getting trained and getting interrupted, that's no fun, and you can kind of learn to play around that. But man, like, if you play a spec like, I mean, no offense, but if you play a spec like BM Hunter, if you just do your rotation pretty optimally and you're kind of trapping on cooldown, it's like you're halfway there, man. Like, you're doing great. keep it up. That's it. Yeah. The simpler the spec, usually the more something like damage carries.
I'll be honest, I feel like for melee that's easier. For a caster, like, if you don't know how to juke, your damage is just going to disappear.
Yeah, like. And you're going to be under pressure the whole time, and that's it's no fun. Yeah, there's a weird disparity there.
Melee, why do you have it so easy? All right, speaking of things that are easy, what would be one thing you would change to make things easier?
I mean, we've said this a million times. I'll go back to an answer I've given before. I really think WoW just needs a sandbox mode for testing stuff. Yeah. I mean, it's really silly that, okay, I pick up a new spec, all right? I can go to the target dummy, who they don't move. They don't really have the proper damage multipliers on them.
Nope.
That information that I'm learning from hitting that dummy is not very practical. I'd rather be able to hit a warlock or a warrior or an enhancement shaman or resto druid. I'd rather be able to sort of see how my damage compares against individual specs, and maybe those specs can fight back. These are we've seen. There's the technology, right? With comp stomp.
Yep.
These target dummies can fight back. Sometimes these target dummies can be pretty brutal, right? I've heard that for a while the comp stomp bots were getting buffed or something. Like, they were much stronger recently. I don't know.
No, but it was just a they were tuned for like or mid-season 1 characters. So everybody that went in on seasons, at the very beginning of the season, and they didn't even have honor gear, or even when they had max honor gear, they're like, it was still like you're basically fighting fully conquest in just like a few greens and some honor gear. So it was
I will give a new answer though. Okay. So one thing I would like changed is I really think, as controversial as it might sound, there needs to be maybe a solo shuffle game mode where until you reach a certain rating, you're playing against bots.
Ooh.
I think that would be a nice way to introduce people to PvP, right? Like, and I think that's fairly common in other games, right? If you are a beginner to another game, I think you get sort of this introductory phase where you're playing against a computer. But right now, definitely not healthy that if you're a new player to PvP and you press solo shuffle, you're put into 1800, which that's no good.
It's a little much.
And yeah, so if players could get introduced by either some sandbox mode or playing against bots for the first 1,000 rating, I think that would be really nice.
Okay. I'm not sure if this is going to make the game easier or not. I don't know. But I would like to see that after a round of solo shuffle, those players are then automatically queued, like whatever you end up with, that last 3v3 team. You're then queued into 3v3 ladder, put into comms, and you have to play that round, win or lose, before you can queue solo shuffle again.
With the same players you just got out of the lobby with?
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah.
There might be some hostility there.
I know. And as I said, I'm not sure if it'd make it easier or not. But my idea there is then it would make people have to try and play together instead of playing by themselves and hope that the others aren't.
Well, what would be cool? You know how in Overwatch, I don't know how it is these days, but after the game is over, you can vote for like a player of the game or whatever. Yeah. It'd be cool if you could do that for a solo shuffle. Like, the score screen pops up and you can vote for a player of the game, and maybe they get like, I don't know, an extra box or some gold or something. And then maybe you could have the option to add them on B-Tag or something.
Yeah. I want to say that was like thought of, but then the assumption was that the community was too toxic and that they were going to use it to try to game, like screw over other players and like get them banned and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that being a possibility for sure.
Yeah, which is sad. But
yeah, unfortunate.
All right, well, that was supposed to be an uplifting end to the segment, but not so much. Well, why don't we talk about the news though, and we'll roll this out.
All right. Who ordered up an extra large can of whoop ass?
All right. That was a bad misclick. News. So, MDI stuff that happened. As I said, the MDI finished just 2 weeks ago. First was the China group. It was actually done earlier, and then it was restreamed with the NA casters, so we kind of follow along with it. So that was on the 20th. Actually, that was happening when we recorded last time. That's what it was. Anyway, congratulations to Team Worms for taking the first place, and F.T.B.Z.M for getting second. And with that, they won some money and they earned themselves into the global finals, which then happened on the happened the weekend, but finished on the 24th. And a huge congratulations to Team Mandatory for winning the MDI. And there were some great matches. I watched kind of the tail end, the grand finals day, the Sunday, and there were some great matches. There's like some real close stuff, and I want to say, so Mandatory, they were on the top, and they knocked the other team, and the other team did a full run through the lowers, come back up, and it came down to like the last game, and it was like it was toe to toe. They're almost there, and then the other team ended up having a full wipe, and that just ended it right there. But yeah, it's unfortunate. We did our shuffle tournament, so that was pretty interesting, right, Big?
Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, it was. I had a good time.
It was a learning experience. I mean,
yes.
Who would have thought that a solo shuffle tournament is quite difficult to? It's like there's a lot of math involved and ChatGPT.
Yeah, well, I needed some AI help to randomize and make teams and everything, and then figure out all the groupings and everything. And apparently, some people thought that a solo shuffle would just be single elimination and they're out. Like they didn't plan for any time really. They thought it would just be like one and done. I was like, yeah, it was unfortunate. But anyway, all that to say, I know a lot of people had a great time. Some people were a little upset because they didn't allocate time properly and then walked away, and then that had some issues. But all that to say, I think those who played, and when they got their matches, they had a pretty good time. And a huge shout out to everybody that showed up. Shout out to you and Jake for holding down the caster voices. And yeah, I think all around it was a pretty good time.
Yeah.
Hot fixes though. There was definitely some winners and losers in hot fixes, eh?
What are these hot fixes? I don't remember.
Oh, there's all that tuning that happened on the 26th. So
26. Let me
26.
Hold on.
Okay.
Oh yes. Okay. Yeah. The blood decay nerf.
Yeah.
Frost decay buffs. Feral Druid kind of got buffed a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Demon Hunter got buffed.
Demon Hunter got buffed. Windwalker Monk. Fire Mage. Holy Priest. I think the biggest winner was definitely Holy Priest, for sure.
Yeah.
From this tuning. Also, here's my hot take. Okay, I have two hot takes.
Oh boy.
Hot take number one.
Mm-hmm.
Frost Decay is the best DK spec, which might not even be a hot take anymore, because I think objectively it actually is. And it's pretty. I mean, Frost DKs are really, really scary in Arena. My other hot take is that Demon Hunters are actually not that bad. I've seen a lot of people say that DH is terrible. Look at DH representation. But I don't think I don't know. I feel like they're okay. You don't really fight them too often in solo shuffle, but when you do, it's like they still feel pretty solid. You're not like, oh wow, this class sucks. It's like, no, I mean, it's pretty good. I don't know.
I think it's definitely better. Talking with some guildmates, there's some diehard Demon Hunters in there, and also talking to Barndoor, he was not liking it. Like, he felt Demon Hunter was very viable in PvE, but PvP he didn't feel like he was doing anything, and probably because there was no sustainment, right? I think it was just burst damage, and if you get locked out of your burst, then right? No different than Frost DK was not so great back in Dragonflight, because it was one trick pony, on 2-minute cooldown, push buttons and then get locked down. You weren't doing anything. So
yeah. I mean, I'm still I was optimistic playing Druid.
Yeah. And
then I played 1,000 games and my optimism went away.
Oh.
I think Druid is Resto Druid, and I'm not being biased here. I genuinely feel that it is probably one of the worst, if not the worst spec right now in PvP. It's definitely the worst healer, I'd say. I don't know. It's just, it feels really not fun right now.
But you have the best CC with Clone.
I know. That's the problem,
okay.
right?
Well, I think other than that, so aside from a little bit of teasing, hotfixes happened back on the 26th. I'm sure a lot of you already know and have been playing into those new changes and felt them. Definitely some winners and not so many losers really, but definitely some winners. So I expect that we'll probably see a slight change in some of the representations.
Yep.
So people kind of fought back on me a little bit, but I honestly am surprised. I thought BM Hunter might see a bit of a dip, but they are untouched, unscathed. Holy Paladin, I thought we might see somewhat of a nerf in a couple spots, but no, not really. So it seems like things are just getting buffed up to come up to what the other levels already are. But
yeah,
I still feel like there is a disparity in the burst potential and damage potential to the complexity level of achieving that burst, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it's the game I think has gravitated. I noticed this towards the end of last expansion where it seems like Blizzard wants things to feel A tier. You know, they want the power level to be there.
Yeah.
So it is a bit weird to me that BM Hunter didn't get nerfed. Ironically, I don't think BM is that good in actual 3v3. I've heard that it's not the best in threes. It kind of like the good meta comps right now just apparently obliterate BM Hunter. That's why we didn't see it so much in the AWC.
Oh.
So I mean that might be one reason why BM hasn't been touched too much.
Okay.
Feral Druid, on the other hand, I mean Feral is arguably the best melee. It's right now it's Outlaw Rogue and Feral. Outlaw Rogue is sort of more of a high level thing.
Yeah.
But Feral Druid hasn't. I mean, they got buffed, and as I said, in these recent hotfixes, which is pretty crazy. But I don't know. The healer, there's this really weird healer disparity, though. Like, you have Holy Paladin, Disc Priest, Mistweaver Monk, and to some extent, Preservation Evoker. Those are like the 4 really good healers. And then you have Resto Shaman, Holy Priest, and Resto Druid. And those still feel like at least a tier behind the other 4. Like they all, it feels like there's this gap. You have the S tier healers, you have the B tier healers, and no one's A tier. Like if you, and you'll feel like when you play with a Resto Druid, for instance, or with a Holy Priest, with a Resto Shaman, you don't really feel safe the entire time. It's like they don't. Holy Paladins are so good at just making sure you don't die. Same with Disc Priests and Preservokers, Mystery Monks. I mean, those things can just make you feel like you're not gonna die. But I don't really get that feeling with the other healers right now.
You're talking solo shuffle only, or are you talking arena total?
Mostly solo shuffle. There's the healer balance is kind of the same in 3v3. Although Resto Shaman apparently is the worst healer in actual 3v3.
Yeah, because I feel like RBGs and BG Blitz, I feel like there's some switch arounds there.
Monk is really like exceptionally good, and
well, that's because they can flag carry and mobility.
Yeah.
Plus also a revival and dot specs. So yeah. All right. Now I'm just kind of curious because there's always that. I know we talk a lot and we focus a lot on arena, but I feel that was something we needed to clarify there. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's about it. One other piece of news in 11.0.7, we're gonna have cross-faction grouping for unrated PvP. So, and why this is important is that actually got announced. The 11.0.7 is going to drop on the 17th of December. So, not that far away. And this is actually kind of interesting because I remember when they first started talking about cross-faction gaming and everything, especially in PvP, they're like, oh, it's only going to be rated. You're not going to be able to unrated. So they changed that tune a little bit. It's definitely going to be different. It's I don't know. It will. I think it's going to help the queues for sure. And it still kind of leads into that whole play with your friends, regardless of what their choices were, good or bad.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay. I think that was the last bastion of Horde versus Alliance was unrated PvP though. Like now it's world PvP, and not even it can't be the free for all zones because half the time you're playing against your own faction in FFA. So yeah, well, I don't know.
Well,
I know a bunch of people are calling for this.
you know, there's always that superstition, like Horde always win BGs or Alliance always win BGs. You know, it's always the other side who's always winning, right?
Yeah.
But now there's no, like, you can't even say that anymore, right? Like, it's like, well, there is no really Horde or Alliance. It's, you know.
Oh yeah, like, especially I guess. I forgot to look at this. I'm not sure if this is just regulars or if it includes epics, because epics you always have your NPCs as well, right? Like that's going to be really weird. Like, can you imagine?
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't imagine queuing up as an alliance with my Horde buddy, spawning in Horde end of Alterac Valley, and trying to rush forward to Dunbaldar to kill the. Like, I just see it just feels weird. Like, I don't know. Anyways, so I looked at it quickly. I don't see anything that says, like, it's just blanket unrated PvP. So yeah, who knows? It might be you might be running epics with your friends on other faction. It'll be weird, but yeah, that's coming down the pipe. And last but not least, kind of a small piece of news, but big news for us. Just with the Christmas season and just a lot of how busy everybody's life has been, and honestly, I think partially just because of how the game has been feeling lately, we're going to be taking a small break on this podcast. So we're going to put the podcast on a short hiatus, looking to return in season 2. So what's that going to be, Big? That's February, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll make an announcement in Discord and over on our socials. We're over on X still, and then also we have a Technically PvP on Blue Sky. So all one word, Technically PvP. So if you want, make sure you're following us in one of those 3 locations, and we will definitely announce where we are going to be, or when we're going to be reinstating the podcast. But definitely going to be taking a bit of a break. Just put a little pin in the podcast, and hopefully come back renewed, refreshed, and happy to keep making content.
Yeah, and it's been a blast doing all these podcasts over all these years. I mean, I don't remember when I joined. Jeez, it's like time has flown by, but
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, it has.
When we come back, there's going to be a lot to talk about, because there'll be, I believe, Mists of Pandaria coming out. Mm-hmm. There's going to be season 2.
Yep.
There's going to be a lot to do in World of Warcraft. Yep. And
Plunderstorm would have just been tailing off.
Oh yeah, Plunderstorm is actually 2 weeks from now.
Yep. No, it's starting on the 17th. 11.0 to 7.
So we're going to have, we're going to come back swinging with all these new discussions. Mm-hmm. But feel free to tweet at any of us. You can tweet at me. Just don't tweet anything about Holy Paladins. Anything nice about Holy Paladins, okay? I'll be very upset.
I should do that every day just because. Man, I love Holy Paladins. They're so awesome.
You know, okay. Quick little story before we go send off. So, you know, this whole season I've been complaining about Holy Paladins as a rest of it, okay?
Yep.
Because I can't beat them. All right? So, last week, I decided, okay, I'm going to do this time walking thing and level my rogue. All right.
Mm-hmm.
I miss playing DPS. So I level my rogue. I get it to max level. I send the boxes through the mail. I had to buy a WoW token to get all my enchants. And, I did all this before I even queued arena. I made sure I had full gear. Okay. I did all this. I spent all this time, but I spent money buying this WoW token. Mm-hmm. I zone into my very first arena, and the enemy healer was a Holy Paladin, and I instantly remembered, wait a second. Holy Pally is also counter assassination rogues. I'm like, no, I've done it to myself again. No, how did I forget? So I can't escape them. My demons, they're following me everywhere.
Well, did you not just change this back over to like subtlety or something like that?
I think that'd be worse, to be honest. I don't know. I mean, the real thing for me to do would be to play Outlaw, but I don't like Outlaw very much. I like being Assassination. It makes me feel like a true rogue, you know, poisons and bleeds. I like that.
All right. Well, poisons and bleeds are definitely where it's at.
Yes.
Indeed. All right. Speaking of poisons and bleeds, is there anybody you want to shout out? Maybe that Holy Paladin?
Who do I want to shout out? Shout out to the entire server of Moonguard.
Oh, jeez.
Yes, for various reasons. I think Moonguard, if you've, as much as people like to meme on it, it is the server that feels the most like World of Warcraft. I mean, there's a lot going on, there's a lot of discussions, a lot of characters. It's just an interesting place all around. So shout out to Moonguard.
Indeed. I honestly love RP Realms. Like they
Yes.
do, even when PvE or PvP feels down, they're still doing things. They keep the world feeling lively.
Yep.
All right. Well, I'm going to shout out Markers because, I said, I was streaming last night. I was having a good time talking with people, just goofing around in PvP, and not PvPing, just goofing around in WoW. I did a delve and whatnot, and then honestly, my office, the room was getting a little hot, and it had been about 2 hours, and I was starting to get a little tired, and so I ended the stream. And then just as I clicked end, I looked down at chat, and Markers had just raided me with his whole stream. So he sent like 200 something viewers over to the channel, and God bless him for doing it. Sorry I missed it. I honestly, I was done. Like I couldn't have streamed anymore even if I wanted to. So, but shout out to Markers for seeing me online and willing to send his lovely viewers over to at least watch me say goodnight to everybody. So that was a thing. Anyway,
nice.
it was extremely nice. Anyway, that's that. Let's get into the outro, and we're going to cap this off from you, Big. If you could tell everybody where they can reach us the next time we start streaming.
I can do that. So you can contact us directly with a tweet to @technically_PvP or by an email to technicallypvp@gmail.com. You can also join our discussions on the Bonus Roll Productions Discord. Also, you can visit the Bonus Roll website to find the podcast directory with us and many other great shows at bonusroll.gg. This directory also has a review system, so head over there and let everyone know what you think of your favorite shows.
Indeed. And I just realized that my Blue Sky and the X are two different versions now. So if you want, you go over to Blue Sky at technicallypvp _bluesky.bsky.social. And as always, links for everything we talked about are going to be in the show notes. I want to thank you all for listening, and we will chat with you next time. Good night, everybody.
Good night, guys.